In 2011, a video went viral. It was 10 minutes long. It showed a man named Joseph Kony, a warlord operating in Central Africa, and it asked viewers to share it. Within 72 hours, it had been watched 100 million times. It became the fastest spreading viral video in the history of the internet at that point. And within 6 weeks, almost nobody was talking about it anymore. The crisis it described had not ended. The children it claimed to protect were still in danger. The warlord it named was still operating. But the video was gone, replaced by the next thing, and the next thing after that. This was not a failure of the video. This was the system working exactly as designed. Here is something historians have always understood, that most people alive today have forgotten. Collective memory is fragile. It requires maintenance. It requires repetition. It requires the deliberate, generational act of telling the same stories over and over again until they become part of who a people are. Every civilization that has ever existed understood this intuitively. The ancient Greeks recited Homer's epics aloud for generations before anyone wrote them down. The oral traditions of indigenous cultures carried histories spanning thousands of years. Through nothing but the human voice, the Jewish people maintained their identity. Across 2,000 years of diaspora, through the ritual retelling of the same stories, every single year. Memory is not something that happens automatically. It is something you do. And social media has made us catastrophically bad at doing it. In 2013, psychologist Betsy Sparrow at Columbia University published a study on what she called the Google effect. Her finding was simple and devastating. When people know information is stored somewhere, they can access at any time, their brains stop bothering to remember it. Not because they are lazy, because the brain is efficient. It offloads storage to external systems, when external systems are available. Before the internet, if you wanted to know something, you had to either memorize it or find a book and look it up. The friction of retrieval made memory worth the metabolic cost. Now there is no friction. Everything is one search away. And so your brain has made a calculation you never consented to. It has decided that remembering things is no longer its job. But here is where it gets dangerous. Because the Google effect applies to facts, to names, dates, figures, information. What social media does is something different, something deeper, something that doesn't just affect what you know. It affects what you care about. In 2016, researchers at the Reuters Institute published a study on news consumption across 14 countries. They found that the average person spent less than 2 minutes on any individual news story. Not 2 minutes per topic, 2 minutes per story. Headline, opening paragraph, scroll. And the topics people spent most time on were not wars, not famines, not political crises. They were stories that made people feel something. Immediately. Outrage, amusement, disgust. Emotions that spike fast and fade fast. The algorithm, on every platform, was designed to maximize engagement. And what maximizes engagement is not importance, it is intensity. A genocide happening slowly, in a country you cannot find on a map, generates less engagement than a celebrity saying something offensive at an awards show. So the genocide disappears from your feed, and the celebrity stays. This is not an accident. This is the business model. In 2017, cognitive scientist James Flynn published research extending what he called the Flynn effect, the documented rise in average IQ scores across the 20th century. His conclusion was that this rise was driven primarily by one thing: abstract thinking, the ability to think about categories, systems, and hypotheticals, rather than just immediate, concrete experience. This capacity developed, Flynn argued, because modern life required it. Reading long-form text, following complex arguments, holding multiple ideas in tension over extended periods of time. But Flynn also warned about something almost nobody quoted from his research. He found evidence that this capacity was beginning to reverse, that younger generations, despite having access to more information than any humans in history, were showing declining ability to follow complex, sustained arguments. Not because they were less intelligent, because the information environment they were developing inside was training a different kind of attention. Fast, reactive, surface level, optimized for the scroll, not for the sustained encounter with difficulty. The tools we built to make us more informed were quietly making us less capable of being informed. And here is the historical consequence that nobody is talking about. We are living through events that will be studied for centuries. the rise of artificial intelligence, the restructuring of global supply chains, the largest refugee crisis since World War II, the sixth mass extinction event in Earth's history. These things are happening right now, while you watch this, and the majority of people alive today will have no coherent memory of them. Not because the events weren't documented, they are the most documented events in human history. More photographs, more video, more text exists of the last 10 years than of the entire previous century combined. But documentation is not memory. A photograph you scroll past in 2 seconds does not become part of you. A headline you read on a push notification while waiting for a coffee does not enter your understanding of the world. We are creating the most complete record of human civilization ever assembled, and simultaneously producing a generation that will remember almost none of it. There is a concept in neuroscience called consolidation. When you experience something, it enters short-term memory first, for it to become a long-term memory, something that changes who you are, something you can access years from now. It needs to be processed, repeated, reflected on, connected to other things you already know. This takes time. It requires something the modern information environment is structurally designed to prevent: stillness. You cannot consolidate a memory while you are already consuming the next thing. Your brain needs gaps, silence, boredom, the space to process. Social media has declared war on gaps. Every moment of stillness is a moment you are not engaging. Every moment of boredom is a moment the algorithm has failed, and so the gaps are filled. Every waiting room, every commute, every quiet moment before sleep, flooded with content, and the events of our time pass through us like water through sand, leaving almost nothing behind. In 2019, researchers at the University of Warwick studied how people remembered major news events from the previous decade. They found that the average person could accurately recall fewer than 3 significant world events from the previous 5 years. Not 3 events per year, 3 events total, from 5 years of living through history. When asked about events they remembered seeing coverage of, most participants reported a vague sense of having known about it at the time, but no details, no context, no understanding of why it mattered, just the memory of a feeling, usually outrage or sadness, lasting, on average, less than 48 hours. The Kony video was watched 100 million times. Within 6 weeks, it was gone. But here is the part of that story that nobody tells. 3 months after the video disappeared from feeds, researchers surveyed a sample of people who had shared it. They asked, "What is happening in Uganda right now?" Fewer than 4% could answer. They had shared a video about a crisis they cared about enough to put their name on. And 3 months later, they had no idea what had happened next. Not because they were bad people, not because they didn't care, because the system they were using was not designed for caring. It was designed for sharing. Caring requires follow-through. It requires return visits. It requires the willingness to be bored by a story that hasn't resolved yet. Sharing requires only a moment of feeling, and then the next moment of feeling, and then the next. Every civilization that collapsed left behind the same pattern in its records. The warnings came first. Then the warnings were forgotten. Then the thing the warnings were about arrived. We have more warnings right now than any civilization in history has ever had. Scientists, historians, economists, all of them producing detailed, documented, peer-reviewed accounts of the exact mechanisms by which things are going wrong. And we are scrolling past them. Not because we don't care, because the system we built to keep us informed has made sustained caring structurally impossible. The 10-minute video that erased history wasn't Kony 2012. It was every video, every post, every notification, every piece of content designed to spike your attention and release it before it could become anything more permanent than a feeling. History is not erased by tyrants burning books. Not anymore. It is erased by a feed that never stops moving, by a system that has learned that your outrage is worth more to it than your understanding, and by the quiet, cumulative effect of a billion small moments of forgetting, each one so small you never noticed it happening, until you try to remember and find almost nothing there.